Hello, Dr. Casey. I decided to do my last social media analysis on a movie, and the movie that I picked was The Color Purple. The Color Purple, for me growing up, um, one of my favorite movies in high school, strangely enough, and it seemed like the culture of my school, well, mainly in the culture of the black students of the school, is that you could tell that The Color Purple was a big part of our growing up. So we spent a lot of time in high school doing quotes from The Color Purple as for fun. And looking at the movie since, a lot of times I'm like, wow, why did we think that was funny? I think just in I think mainly because of how comedians, we grew up watching Martin, Eddie Murphy, Dave Chappelle, Ricky Smiley, all black comedians, how they portray black people and try to make a joke out of the way slaves used to talk or people from African American people from the past used to talk. So I think in hindsight, we took to The Color Purple because it had some of those undertones and it made us think of that. And so we spent a lot of our time quoting from the movie and impersonating scenes from the movie. But it was very much a part of our history and growing up, and a movie we could say, like, to be proud of, in the sense that is a part of black culture, as being a very deep movie with Danny Glover and Whoopi Goldberg that really put one of the movies that continued to put African American actors onto the map. So I think that it had a lot to do with it too. Um, and the reason I picked The Color Purple was because I thought it displayed hints and glimmers of what is a part of the pursuit of the American dream. So, um, and in The Color Purple, the movie portrays Celie, who has, oh, well, you know what, let me back up because I wanted to say this. I just wanted to briefly talk about the aspects of the American, or about the American dream a little bit. And I think the American dream is, because from my understanding of what I think we've been studying in class, is that it has not been technically defined, but there is so much that is comprised of it, that you could say any part of it and hit on the American dream. And so for me, the foundation of the American dream would be a cultivation of the collective conscience of the American dream, would be, successful marriage and all the roles and duties that fall into that: education, employment, social status, economic status, wealth, and so on. So that's what I think encompasses the American dream, but there are very much detailed aspects of each of those institutions that are deemed acceptable as cultivating the American dream, and specific jobs and whatnot, just to put it broadly. So moving on, the movie The Color Purple portrays a woman named Celie who suffered greatly, and I'm just going to read this because I like how I wrote it. The movie portrays a woman named Celie who has suffered greatly at the hands of many social institutional barriers. For example, the movie, from what I found, the movie is based upon the 1910 to 1940s time frame. And so if you think about it, laws were in place that put women low in general. So you can imagine where, under the institution of law, a black woman fell. Then just marriage, or in education and whatnot. And she faced many of these barriers. She wasn't educated in reading or anything. And in the movie, in which I'm going to focus on as far as how this movie portrayed the American dream, is on marriage. That portion of the American dream and the traditions that goes on it. So Celie embarks on marriage in the traditional sense, but her marriage was very much far from anything than being a dream. It was a terrible marriage, a marriage of convenience. It was pretty much a nightmare, and her husband Albert was very abusive. The clip of the movie that I showed it's toward the end of the movie, and it's actually at the part where Celie is beginning to reclaim her life, or to reclaim her life and confidence, and to become brave and actually stand up to her husband. Um, and it also portrays like this historical shift in the American dream, where at one point it could not be cultivated for a woman without a man. So ultimately, the American dream for a woman was to be married, be a keeper at home, which is very wonderful and can be very good. But at that point in time, the American dream being be a woman, get married, goes to get married, have children, and that is a whole other thing of itself. And to be at home, to serve her family, serve her husband in any and every way he desires, and that ideally was the American dream, to be able to do that, to not have to worry about that. But you have the husband to do all these things. So in this scene, she's leaving. In the scene that I chose, she's leaving her abusive husband to live her own life and to pursue her own American dream. And I don't have it in the clip, but at the end, the clip that I'm gonna show, it shows her reclaiming that confidence and saying, yes, like I can have a dream also, like I can pursue my own goals apart from you, and I am somebody and I can be somebody. And actually, in the end of the movie, she ends up owning her own business, and a successful business, and her own house, and her own, believe it's a dress shop. So all the things that her husband thought she couldn't do without him, or lacked the characteristics thereof to accomplish. Let's see here. The meanings and values associated with the American Dream in this movie. Okay. Originally, and I've already kind of hit on this before, originally the meanings and values assigned, there's two meanings and values assigned in this scene. One is Albert's and one is Celie's, and the traditional sets of belief in him asserting his negative emotions to her deviating from the cultural norm of where a woman should be, and which is home cooking, cleaning, caring for the children, and most importantly in the movie, throughout the entire movie, but more so here, adhering to his needs. And here you see him reacting to her no longer doing this. So in the clip, Albert, her husband, applies a negative emotion to her desire to leave and pursue her own dream. So that meaning is being applied. And then, her deviant behavior in the tradition of marriage in their society and their culture of being African American. And then her actions, and his father actually aids in that and kind of jokes about her wanting to do that. So he further builds up this case in deeming Celie deviant and going against the social grain. And then you have Celie asserting this sense of confidence and assigning meaning to almost, I don't want to say the hard working, but the self-esteem required, in which to look at yourself and say, I am somebody and I have a right to a future, and I can be whatever I want to be. And it may mean I have to leave you to do that, and I shouldn't be, faulted for that. So she's assigned meaning and value in more of an individual sense that is apart from him. But we know now in American culture can be very well cultivated together in marriage, and woman and man, although being together in holy matrimony, one flesh and all that the sanctity of marriage implies, can very much so still have those things that would be in pursuit of the American dream, but and not be considered a complete fool. But I do know that argument is, there's some that would differ in that, but we both know that no longer is totally the case. There are social groups where women and couples can be accepted and feel safe knowing that they're not exactly doing the part of the American dream that the movie actually wants portrayed, where the woman was at home. Albert begins to communicate a list of characteristics, and I know the second part of it is what indicators in the example reflect this meaning and value. His emotion, his negative reaction. He actually gets up and leans over, his body language, leans over and towards her, and then he starts to verbally express his distaste for her, wanting to go against this American dream of your place is here serving me because that's all you're capable of doing. I'm going to read here. Albert begins to communicate a list of characteristics that culturally speak to what would be required to make it in the world and achieve the American dream. Comparing Celie, his wife, to her longtime friend, Shug Avery. So even then, in that period, the words, and I'm going to share them with you. As he's comparing her to Shug, he says, he tells her, "You can't sing. You have no talent." Or he said, "Shug, she can sing. She's got talent. She's got spunk. She can talk to anybody she wants to. That means she knows how to work her room. She has great communication skills. She can stand up and be noticed," right? So capitalize on that cultural capital in a way that he thinks Celie cannot, or in a way that he thinks is important in order to make it out into the real world, in order to pursue the American dream. He does not never say the American dream, but in my opinion, it just ensues that making it out there on your own to be successful. And I think to be successful is a slant towards the American dream of whatever the society is at that point. So he tells her that, and then he goes on to tell her to verbally express what she isn't. So he goes and says what Shug is. This is the example of how you achieve the American dream. If you can sing, if you've got talent, if you've got spunk, if you can talk to anybody, and make friends with anybody. Mind you, this is that 1900s time frame. African American people were treated very wrongly, but it's asserting a sense of she can get respect from anybody. And now he goes on to tell her what she actually isn't, or what she actually is. You're ugly, you're skinny, you're shaped funny, you're too scared to open your mouth to talk to people. So he's telling her this because you are ugly. I think because he thinks she's ugly, skinny, her body is not proportioned or beautiful, and that she's has a personality that is more reserved and maybe a little timid. And I wonder why, because of his abusive nature. He would say, "You're not someone that is capable of pursuing the American dream, or that could even do it, because I'm telling you, this is what you are." And he goes on to further, in my opinion, in what we talked about in class too, in how stratification systems are socially constructed. He gives a prime example of going further and verbally expressing, telling her, this is what, because you're ugly, skinny, shaped, funny, and can't open your mouth and all these things, and incapable of pursuing anything outside of this, here's what you are qualified for, and that's to be Shug Avery's maid. And Shug was a very talented woman. She could sing, she could dance. I don't know if you ever seen the movie, but the song, "Sister, you stay on my mind. Sister, you're one of a kind. Oh, sister, I got my eye on you." She's real talented. She sings in all the juke joints. She's really popular. She's beautiful. But he said, "Well, here's what you're Here's what you're fit for. You can be her maid, or you could be her cook, or maybe they'll let you work on somebody's farm, or even on the railroad." And so he says, to further complete his example, he says, "Here's what you are fit for," and that is a prime example of how society is, stratification systems are socially constructed. And jobs, employment, is because you're a woman, this is what you're good for. You're only good for being someone's maid or this, and you're saying that this type of job is reserved for a woman, but definitely a woman that is not qualify for the American dream. That even on just the scale of the woman's role or job opportunities or whatnot, you're putting it way down low outside of the world. In the house, it would have been fine, right? But in the world, you're just fit to be her cook or her maid or work on a railroad or something. But then when I began to think about it, and then how we assign or we genderify jobs and labels, and I know there's a little debate there to that, and there are some jobs that are difficult to do, but then how we can say, oh, well, nursing is just for women, or and then construction worker is just for men, and I begin to think of some of the jobs he named, like being a farmhand or work on a railroad, even though those are more manly jobs. But at that time period, you're lowering her to saying that, but she would have been working on one of the most, the railroad at that point in time was industrially a big deal, and it meant a lot of things to a lot of towns and connecting towns and goods, foods, materials, and all these things. So the fact that she would have been working would have actually been really good, but because of how class and gender and job roles were assigned, it would have been menial for her, but probably would have been more meaningful. It would have been more profitable or boastful for a man to say, yeah, I work on the railroad that did this, and connected these two towns. And so even in that, in the American dream, viewing job descriptions, I think a maid is very important. I think a cook is very important. I think a woman that can farm and cultivate land, I am a Christian, and I just think about the Proverbs 31 woman, and she didn't just stay home and cook. Proverbs 31 woman, she worked in the marketplace, she farmed, she took care of her family, she bought the groceries, she made clothes, she handled the businesses and affairs of her family and whatnot. So she actually did all that. But the fact that he could take the jobs and put them here, and then say, to be talented, to be making out in the world, you need to have, or to make it in the world and to pursue the American dream, you should be able to sing, have spunk, communicate to people. But if you're this ugly and misshaped and formed, here's the jobs that are good for you to be a maid. That's not a part of the American dream. But we know now that, can a maid, even though the pay might not be as good, still have a mind frame of wanting more, wanting better for his or herself? And the same thing for a cook. Does that change their mind that I still want to cultivate wealth and continue to learn, educate in whatever aspect, maybe school, maybe not, but in any way, to keep those processes going. Lastly, the implications. How did it plant meaning? How did this movie plant meaning? Albert, again, contributed to what was culturally acceptable for women. Working in the home, cooking, caring for children, and adhering to their needs, to the husband's needs, no matter how abusive or absurd they might have been. That's how he assigned meaning. And then Celie began at the very end to assign meaning to a different world where she is able to verbalize, like, you are a low down dirty dog and I deserve better, and I'm maybe those things that you're saying that you characterize me as, but I can be more than that, and the only way I'm going to be more than that is away from you. And that is, and even though he's telling her it's impossible for her to, she was able to assert herself and fight past that social self that Cooley we talked about in class, where we think how people view us, and then they respond to it, and we react to how they view us. And I really felt like in the movie that was a blow up for that, like fighting past it, where she could have taken that in and accepted that characteristic of social self, but she said, no, like, I want more for myself, and I'm gonna go achieve it. And an example of that, what she was saying, and I love it, is she said, I may be poor, I may be black, I may be ugly, but I'm here. I'm here, meaning I'm alive, I'm free now to try and give it my all, so yeah, and another thing I just thought about, adding into that, it's a historical shift. I did some research a little bit, and it talked about, and I'll put my sources in on the link where I found this at. But there was a lot going on in the 1910s that I found that the movie was based on 1910s, 1940s or whatever. But the second migration where African American people were leaving the South and going up north, I found out about 1.5 million were doing that. In the movie, actually, Celie was going with Suge to Tennessee. And I'm not quite sure what setting the movie was, but I'm very sure it was very deep south. So even going to somewhere like Tennessee probably would have felt like migrating north, or might have been, significantly different there. What else? A bunch was happening for the African American community. Marcus Garvey was establishing things for the Improvement Association of Negro Improvement Association, the Harlem Renaissance, which promoted literacy, artistic, intellectual movements, um, these sort of things. The women's suffrage was going on, World War II, World War One. So the whole culture and the whole institutions, all the institutions of life were shifting at this point. So Celie saying, I may be those things as she's getting in that car and, they're driving away. She's saying, but I'm here, saying I'm ready to pursue these things. Yeah, it definitely speaks to a culture shift for women, the social group of women in general. Um, so yeah. Um, I missed one. Albert assigned meaning and value displayed in gender-specific classism. The jobs, what was acceptable, what was not, and I talked about that a little bit earlier. But overall, it was a positive affirmation at the end um, of what would be to come for women. And I talked about those things, just a few historically. And meaning and values for women was shifting from very much still the home. And, I'm sure women at that time still wanted family and to cultivate family and whatnot. But also meaning and value being assigned to individually, personally, and wanting to critically think about what are some things that I like to do, what are some things that I'm good at, what are some goals that I want to at least try to achieve in my life. Therefore, going towards a form of American dream. I would say a healthier form of the American dream. Not so much the structured American dream of the only way to be successful is, go to a 4-year school, get this type of job, and know this social group of people, but in a more positive way. But very much so speaking to a dream of a better life, an American dream of that pursuit in which a lot of people this time period were on. And going through the civil rights movement, you can see what it ended up on that side of it. But still, I do see a blow for her and a transition historically for women's rights institutionally and culturally. Um, and that's it. Thank you.